Hi everyone, I'm Seth Factor. I'm delivering a session today on social media and self-care for the Shama Women's Centre on their online mindfulness programme. So feel free to drop Shama Women's Centre a like or a follow on their Instagram or Facebook account, and also YouTube too. Or why not drop me a follow on Resonate Success on Instagram or Facebook, and to hear more tips on mental well-being and how we can improve the quality of our lives more. So, today we're going to talk about social media and mental health. And it is without a doubt that with the advent of technology, we're living more than ever in a world online through our interactions, whether they be social or business or anything else. And we've got to say, there are positives and negatives out there in terms of social media. Sometimes we can find some really important information or content that's really useful in our day-to-day lives. But we can also get distracted by content too. So it's about providing a platform or an area or space where we can learn to balance everything in the right way. So I think that during lockdown, as a global society, we've been beginning to use social media a lot more than we used to. And this is due to various reasons, for example, homeschooling, working from home, etc. But even before that, I personally felt that the negative effects of social media myself for work and in terms of connecting with people, and what would happen, it actually started affecting the way I slept, the quality of my sleep, because I was constantly checking tweets, my news feeds, etc. And little did I know at that time that electrical devices actually interfere with your sleep patterns because it stimulates the brain and affects something called our circadian rhythm. And this is the natural cycle of physical, mental behaviour changes that the body goes through in a 24-hour cycle, and it's natural. But what happens is circadian rhythms are mostly affected by light and darkness and are controlled by a small area in the middle of the brain. And what happens is we naturally begin to wind down as it gets darker, and our brain produces the chemicals to do that. So the particular chemical I'm talking about here is something called melatonin. And it allows our bodies to slowly begin to wind down and prepare for that sleep that we're going to encounter. So think about it, tapping away on that phone or on devices before bed can actually be really difficult, because for me it actually caused me to have sleep issues. Why? Because it took my brain longer than usual to settle down into that natural sleep pattern and began affecting my circadian rhythm. So perhaps this resonates with whoever's watching this today. Because what we're doing, we're being counterproductive in terms of our brain's producing that relaxing chemical, but at the same time, we're keeping our brain awake by using those electrical devices and checking on social media, for instance. So what did I do to counteract this? Well, I started to implement social media detoxes as a vital part of my self-care regime. And online detoxes helped remind me that I didn't need to be constantly entertained or distracted, for example, and that my mental and physical well-being and unwinding in the evening and ultimately getting that good night's sleep was more important. That was in order for me to function better the next day. Don't get me wrong, you can learn a lot online, but everything in proportion is what counts here. Some of you who may be listening in today may be parents or students or professionals or even homemakers, and you might resonate with what I'm saying. So if you do, feel free to drop a comment below and we can learn from each other together. Now, sometimes we can browse and scroll away, and this is due to boredom often, or just to click off from a task we might have at hand. Or perhaps you might have to do some research for work or your studies or something else. But whatever the reason is, one thing is for sure, we need to begin to reinvest in our lives again, as we can only have one life. And reflecting in our life in terms of creating that healthy work balance, life-work balance, is really key in creating that mindful awareness and becoming more happier in our lives and more controlled in our lives in terms of what we want to, what values we want to live by, and what but under our terms, recreate those terms. Otherwise, what can happen if we look at the extreme end of the scale, we can end up leading into the path of something called burnout. And we'll talk a little bit about this later on. So let's look a little bit at social media during COVID-19. Perhaps you're somebody whose work involves staying up 24/7 social media wise, especially if you have a business or a brand which is on social media, your finger, is always on the pulse. And I know that running my business on social media has been a great learning curve in so many ways for me. And I'm still learning as I go along, and perhaps you are too. Or perhaps you're already an expert, and that's fantastic. So relating this with the global pandemic that we're all going through at this moment, it can get really exhausting in terms of mentally, emotionally and physically being on the go in terms of social media, whether it's our job or not. So it's even more important now than ever to prioritise and care for our mental well-being and to take those positive steps for changing our lives for the better and creating that better life-work balance. Now, if we cast our minds back for a moment, pre-COVID, we can see ourselves working perhaps in vibrant offices or in an environment with our team where we can get our job done. But during COVID, things have dramatically changed in the way that we work. People are facing struggles in terms of isolation, regardless of how many Zoom or MS Teams meetings we're having. Homeschooling on top of that, children are at home, and we're trying to juggle a new type of parental responsibility. And I hold up my hand to that. It's been a learning curve. And also trying to remain professional at the same time. I believe that the way in which we've been working has taken a toll on us all in different ways. Now, figures from 2020 have shown that screen time across the board has risen, with views on Instagram Live perhaps doubling in 1 week, and Facebook and Instagram seeing a 40% increase in usage as well. I sincerely believe that these figures have probably tripled or more so massively since then, with working from home being an integral part of our day, or, being a parent and trying to juggle all those responsibilities from home. And as a result, mental health has increased dramatically during lockdown, regardless of a person's background, of their employment, of their occupation, or whether even they're a homemaker, it doesn't matter. And what I anticipate, there'll be an immense pressure on the NHS and waiting lists will be longer than before. So, if you're an employer, what can you do to provide the right kind of support for your team whilst also addressing the support that you may need? Even the smallest of changes will help your team better support each other through COVID-19 and returning back to work. So even if you really love social media, perhaps you're an influencer or business owner or an organisation or a support group, but it's really important how now more than ever to make time to check in with yourself and your colleagues and to find that support that you need wherever you can. So I want to share a few tips on how to improve your mental well-being during this challenging time. So let's look at the first social media tip. Regularly checking on your workload. So as for a starter, I want to talk about burnout. So what is this? I mentioned this a few minutes ago. So burnout is when we have been working or absorbed in tasks non-stop with very little time to catch our breath and recharge. And if we don't create the opportunity to recharge ourselves effectively, what can happen? We can be at the risk of going into burnout. What happens is we begin to suffer physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Perhaps you have a demanding job or life is demanding at the moment. The question here is, what do you do for self-care? Is it enough? Have a think of that for a moment. Now, the next question I'd like to ponder on is, why is it that we don't make time for us, for ourselves? Don't we deserve self-care and self-love? I think we do. And I think it's even more important that we prioritise our self-care and well-being during these challenging times. Now, I've worked with clients who've sat on different stages of that burnout scale, either manifesting signs of approaching burnout or in full swing of peaking at burnout or post-burnout. Now, I just want to point out here that burnout can happen to anyone, and it doesn't mean you're weak in any way. You may be the most passionate or committed person, yet the symptoms of burnout will happen through no fault of your own. Now, according to the World Health Organization, they define burnout as chronic workplace stress that has not been managed successfully. The predominant symptom being lack of energy, exhaustion, mentally distancing yourself from your work, and a drop in your professional effectiveness. Does this sound familiar to you? Well, I can say that I personally recognise these signs, and perhaps you may too. So if you do, feel free to drop a comment below or share some insight into how you've been feeling, or perhaps you've noticed that with somebody that you work with. But the secret here is getting over or avoiding burnout and to begin to recognise the signs. And the first stage is to monitor your current workload. So how do we do that? Well, first tip here, I'd like to give you a little task. Why not spend some time each week to review your to-do list? Is it manageable or overwhelming? Is there anything that can be moved down the priority list or removed even? Or perhaps you can delegate it to somebody else in your team. Now, by providing the space to access your workload, it can really help you actively get those priorities in order without compromising on your valuable health. Now, once you know what's actually achievable in any given work week, you begin to create a level of awareness and find the strength to say no to things that aren't essential or aligned with your goals, which means you spend more time working on the things that are important to you. And saying no is really important sometimes, because if we say yes to everything that we're being told to do, that's all very well. And, we have to hit deadlines and we have to get there. But if it's compromising our mental health, it's about having that conversation and saying, I don't think I can do this, but I'm not sure if I'm able to do that. So you start off with a positive and say, I can do this by this date, but I'm not sure when I can do that. So at least then your manager or your team are able to perhaps help you out and get the support that you need, because I'm sure some of them are probably going through exactly the same. Another tip, why not keep a check on your screen time and set limits for yourself? Now, a massive number of people we know use social media. So while researching this, I found that the average internet user spends about 6 hours and 43 minutes online each day. Wow, they are massive figures. And these figures have changed. I think these figures have probably changed immensely since lockdown, because we're not out and about as much as we were before. Now, if you feel that social media is starting to affect your mental health, you might want to start setting those limits of time you spend on social media. And here's a few tips on how to do it. Setting app limits. So since it's unlikely you'll be able to quit social media altogether, I know that sometimes I find it hard to do so, setting time limits on your phone can be very helpful. So if you have an iOS 12 or above on your iPhone, you can actually track and monitor the time you spend on your phone and on the social media platforms. You can even set a time limit for using apps like maybe Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. You'll be notified when the time's about to run out, and you'll be reminded to close the app. I get a weekly report on my own iPhone to let me know on a Monday how much screen time I've had over the week, and sometimes it's shocking the amount of hours that I've been online, and it breaks down how much time I've spent on Facebook, how much time I've spent on the internet or researching. It breaks it all down, and it kind of makes me think, okay, I didn't look after my welfare much last week, but I really need to figure out what happened there, and today's a new week and we'll move forward from that. Perhaps you have an Android phone. So what you can do, you can track and monitor your screen time using something called the Digital Wellbeing feature. Have a look at it on your phone. You can set app timers as well and different modes like bedtime mode and focus mode. And you can use the Moment app to understand where you're spending your time. And remember, don't be afraid to ask for help. It doesn't mean you're weak. It actually means you're strong because you're reaching out, you're being brave enough to notice how you're feeling at this present moment. And perhaps that it might actually encourage other people who you'd probably be surprised to know are feeling exactly the same. Now, although mental health well-being awareness is growing in the workplace, unfortunately, many people still face challenges of getting help that they need. Now, according to the Mental Health Foundation, there is a fear of discrimination and feelings of shame are amongst some of the top reasons why people don't tell their colleagues or their employers to address the needs. Now, as a mental wellbeing specialist who's worked in this area for many years, I encourage employers to address the needs of your employees simply by seeing through their eyes empathetically. Start to just simply engage in those vital conversations, and give the option for anonymous information as well. Perhaps people don't want to share their anxieties or worries in case people perceive them as weak. And if you're an employer, perhaps you want to get in touch with Shama and find out how we can help you get you where you need to be, because we're offering some bespoke packages and you might just want to take up an opportunity with our specialists, in-house specialists. Another thing which is really important, take regular breaks from your desktop. So those of us that work on a desktop, for example, as well as using our devices, we may find we have a Twitter feed open in the background on our desktop. Or perhaps you're managing all your social media on the web, depending on your job or the work that you're doing. Now, if you're one of these people, if you find yourself being overwhelmed by social media, just set some reminders to step away from the screen. This will really help you because it will keep you accountable. It reminds you that your well-being is just as important. I find that every now and then, a few times a day, I literally step away in between appointments or meetings or work that I'm doing and go for a brisk walk around the block. If I don't have time for that, I'll just go away from the office and just go and look at a tree or enjoy the view and just look at the clouds or something, just to click away and help myself to gain that clarity. Right, so another thing is switching off notifications or setting bedtime wind downs. Oh my goodness, this is one of the most impactful things for me. It really helped me to kind of click off. It's a reminder, it's about accountability. Did you know that you can actually set a bedtime reminder on your mobile device? I use this on my iPhone and it really helps me to get into that wind down mode. So if you have an iPhone, you can set this up under your clock setting. It's similar to Do Not Disturb, but notifications won't even appear on your lock screen, so there's no temptation to reply to or DM somebody back or open an app. So I find it's amazing because it allows me to not listen to that ping or to that sound on my phone or see the screen light up at night and then think, oh, I better check on that. It's been absolutely... oh gosh, it's been such a help for me. But if you're an Android user, you can turn on something called bedtime mode in the digital wellbeing feature. And what's also great here, you won't get, again, those notifications and pings that disturb us in the night. So let me know in your comments below if you've experienced using these settings before or any thoughts you have about this. So another tip, you can actually control your social media feeds. Perhaps you work in social media or you run a business like me that relies on social media marketing. And you probably have more than one Instagram account like me as well. So for many people, having a personal and business profile on Instagram, it's standard. But what does that actually mean? Well, it means you have ×2 news feeds to scroll through. You have ×2 the amount of DMs and messages to respond to, and double amount of time you're spending online. Now, the key thing here is about spending more time on social media, that the content you consume can actually impact your mood and your overall well-being. I know personally I've had to offload my Twitter app from my phone because I felt that work and my personal time boundaries were being blurred. And this started affecting my anxiety levels as well. And to be honest with you, it was the best decision at that time to make. And sometimes I offload apps, or I delete my apps and give myself a social media break, and it's the best thing really. And then you go back onto it again later. Because otherwise we get caught up in that cycle of looking at what other people are doing and comparing ourselves in terms of our content to others, whether we do it consciously or subconsciously. Now, another way of doing this is unfollowing accounts, because especially accounts that bring about a negative mindset, that make you feel not so good about yourself. Perhaps you're scrolling through your feed and you find that consciously or subconsciously you begin to compare your looks or your home, your car, your lifestyle to those ever so perfect Instagram influencers, and it doesn't make you feel good. Just simply unfollow them. Why do we put, the question I always think is, why do we put ourselves through this? It's a good thought to reflect upon, and perhaps it's something you can do over the next week. Have a look at your followers or people you're following and see if it has a negative or positive effect on you. So by making sure that people and brands you follow on Instagram are aligned with what's important to you, will get you value of positivity by filtering through the unnecessary negativity. And it's actually very liberating. I found that I had a lot of accounts that I was following, but there were people who perhaps were going through some issues themselves and started off positive, became very negative, and it affected my day-to-day stuff. So I decided to unfollow them and wish them the best. Now, you will always find someone doing more than you. That's a fact of life, and you may be doing more than somebody else. And that's okay. And somebody might have a massive following and makes vibrant or informative content, and that's great. So we don't really need to compare ourselves with them, because we are unique. Your content is unique, your message is unique, and the way I may deliver a message, you may deliver a message. It's the same message, but the way in which we deliver it will be different because we are unique. So we have to remind ourselves that we are more than enough. Self-belief goes hand in hand with your success. I found that if I can't unfollow someone because of work or friendship, I use a mute button on Instagram or Twitter, and that way you hide them from your feed, and you can unfollow someone on Facebook too while still remaining friends with them, so there are no awkward situations or awkward conversations to be had. That way you're looking after your well-being on your terms. Now, the opposite, why not follow positive accounts that make you feel good about yourself and inspire you? Remember, you are in control of your feed. And just like how you can unfollow any accounts that make you feel bad, it's important to add in some accounts that make you feel good too. Strike that balance. It's all about the balance of life and self-care, realizing that we can control what we see. So, to give you a little bit of a challenge, the next time you're on social media, just notice and see how many positively inspiring accounts you are actually following. Do you follow any travel accounts? Do you follow any motivational speakers or any humour accounts or meme accounts? I love to follow people who inspire others, who are authentic and real, that's what I like. And that you might like something completely different, but find people who really, their vibe increases your vibe. Now, prioritising self-care is really, really important. Perhaps you're thinking about how the term self-care is trending right now, especially during lockdown. Now, I just want to be clear here that I don't consider it a trend. I feel it's an important element of our lives, and we should look at self-care importantly, just as important as we look at news updates, for example. I think that's really important to bear in mind. So, just as you prioritise appointments such as family appointments, work appointments, the same I feel should be for prioritising our mental well-being and self-care. It's about shifting our understanding, because what we're doing is embedding self-care as a priority so that we become more resilient and we can tackle those curveballs of life. And essentially, you're creating a stronger you, helping you to cope better and move forward on your terms. And I think that's something that's really important. So why not try some of the following techniques? Make time for daily meditation. You might be thinking, if you're a busy professional, taking 10 minutes, or busy mum or busy dad, taking those 10 minutes out of your day is not going to really help. But I can tell you today that making those tiny small investments, even if it's 5 to 10 minutes a day, can really begin to make a positive difference over time and practice. Perhaps follow some meditation, mindfulness activities on my online sessions on the Shaman Women's Centre YouTube or Facebook account. Or perhaps have a look at what's being offered at work or in your college or university, for example. So, by reducing stress, you are creating a better quality of life for you. So, by engaging in some form of meditation, you'll become more productive. You'll build your self-resilience and your creative juices will be on fire. Now, there's lots of apps out there that are free as well that you can use, and some are paid, such as Headspace. There's one called My Life that I use, and Smiling Mind, and they've got some free meditations, guided meditations that are absolutely amazing. You can do them in your car, you can do them in your house, in your room, before you start your day. So if you're interested in reaping those benefits of social media detox for yourself, here are some of the steps I found really useful as well. Amending your diet, looking at your diet. Remember, we talk about, you might hear terms like you are what you eat, etc. Sometimes. But what we put in our body affects the way our mind works and how our body reacts. So feeding your body with nutritional food will replenish your energy and subsequently influence your well-being for the better. Why not keep a daily diet log? Keep a log and be truthful, because this will only work if you're truthful. Write down what you eat and drink during the day. It doesn't matter if it's a biscuit or a handful of nuts or a fizzy drink, just write it down. And at the end of the day, just ponder over the nutritional value of your daily nutrition. Maybe consider trying out a new recipe, perhaps. It doesn't have to be complicated and expensive. All we need to do is just occupy your thoughts on something different, and cooking more mindfully, taking the time out. And home cooked food always tastes better, because this way you begin to enjoy the process of preparing it yourself, and you derive that pleasure from eating it. And it's kind of making me hungry now talking about food. So another thing, why not go for a walk or a jog? It will really get that blood pumping and produce happier chemicals in the brain naturally. Perhaps go for a few brisk walks in between tasks like me, or just, walk up and down your room if that's something that you can do. Or perhaps start or end your day with a walk or a run to get that heart pumping and get those positive chemicals in your brain releasing into your system to make you feel naturally better about yourself. Maybe try some exercises, or try Pilates or yoga. I like yoga. It's great for producing a sense of calm, and there are so many, lots of videos on YouTube or even online yoga classes. Perhaps have a look and search in your area, because they'll help you relax and help you to strengthen your body too, giving you the energy to start your day by creating an amazing body-mind connection. So why not indulge in a bit of pampering? And I know we're currently in lockdown, but hopefully as things begin to go back to normal, why not book yourself in for a massage? Because I know that's one of the first things I will be doing. It really helps me to click off and relax and get those toxins out of my body and my mind to become more clear and calmer. If this is something you do, that's great. And if not, why not just give it a try, even if it's just a head massage or a shoulder and neck massage. Now, I hope you found this session useful today. We talked about social media and detoxing ourselves from negative accounts and putting limits and being in control of what we see and what we don't see. in order to increase our mental and physical well-being and psychological emotional well-being too. I would love to know what you thought of today's session, so feel free to pop your comments below. I'm going to leave you with a quick quote by Parker Palmer. I really like this quote. Self-care is never a selfish act. It's simply good stewardship of the only gift I have, the gift I was put on the earth to offer others. Anytime we can listen to true self and give the care it requires, we do it not only for ourselves, but for the many others' lives that we touch. Now, in the next session, we're going to be looking at being proud of your identity, looking at how wonderfully unique you are and what makes you who you are. So until then, you take care and try out some of the social media detox and let me know how it went. So take care. Until then, bye-bye.